My dad is so big, so strong and so mild. Everything I can do. My dad is so big, strong and so mild. Everything I can do. The mountains are his, the valleys are his, the stars are his, and they be too. My dad is so big, so strong and so mild. Everything I can do for you.
Good job.
Let's do that again.
Well, here, let me ask you some questions, okay?
Okay.
Okay, what is your name?
My name is Sydney Ryan Dallas.
Sydney Ryan Ellis. And what's my name?
Megan and Dallas.
Megan Ann Ellis. Okay, now, what is your daddy's name? What's your daddy's name?
Megan.
No, that's me. What's your daddy's name?
Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan. And where is your daddy?
My daddy's in my heart.
Yeah, he lives in your heart.
Yeah.
And he lives in Mommy's heart, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we have the same daddies.
Well, my daddy is Papa.
And
And your daddy is Ryan.
my daddy is Ryan and Papa.
Well, that's true. Yeah, Papa's kind of like your...
My papa's and my daddy.
Yeah, Papa's your grandpa, but he kind of is like a daddy to you here because your daddy's in heaven.
Mommy, that's big, and Mommy, big Sydney and small Sydney.
Yeah, you do look smaller on the screen, don't you?
And it looks big on screen too.
Yeah.
Look, oh, look that up there.
I think that's a little piece of... I don't know.
That's just...
What do you want to say to everybody that's listening? Can you say hi?
Hi.
Don't pick your nose.
Hi.
Hi.
Dig.
We love everybody.
I love Dig.
And thank you for...
I love Dig.
Hey, listen. Can you say thank you for helping me?
Thank you for helping me.
Yeah, and my mommy. And loving us.
I
And taking care of us. And for
I love you.
and for loving on Sydney.
Ah!
Okay. Bye.
My baby. Don't give me baby. That's my baby.
Okay. All right. I love you.
I love you.
I'm going to talk to everybody some more.
Okay, Mommy.
Okay. Well, I'm sitting here on another gorgeous April day, and I'm reflecting back on the past 3 years and the other videos that I've done on this day every year. And they always seem to be beautiful days. And I think it helps a little bit, to have just a beautiful backdrop, and my parents have such a beautiful yard to do these videos every year. And I struggled this year. This is 4 years since we lost Ryan. And I really, it struck me this year even more that, I have to remember it's not just me that lost Ryan 4 years ago. It's easy to get in your own mind, and you live with yourself, so you constantly know your own feelings, but I'm just reminded of all the other people that lost him as well. His family members, friends, co-workers, and everybody lost, a different piece of Ryan than I did, maybe. And I think it's hard, but it's also special to remember that Ryan meant so much to so many different people. And I'm grateful, to continue to remember that every year through these videos, and you know, like I said, this one was a little harder for some reason. I kind of change this part of April. I feel myself getting more anxious and also a little short, you know, my temper. Little things that don't normally bother me, and I really do think it's that muscle memory of this time of year, and just thinking about, you know, what was going on 4 years ago, when, you know, everything changed. So it's just been a little more difficult this year to put this together, but it was still very healing, and I'm glad I've done it. You know, I don't know how long I'll do these. You know, maybe next year. You know, 5 years is, you know, 5 is a good number, and I know I'll continue to do videos, maybe just private videos for Sydney and of other things, and I'm writing still and just continuing to remember, you know, in my own ways. So I wanted to start with a few more memories that I just picked. You know, I've got tons of them written down, but I just picked a few that I thought, you know, everybody might enjoy listening to. The pollen is so bad right now. I can already feel it in my throat out here, so forgive me. But I wanted to share some memories, so here's just a few more that I thought would be fun. So I was thinking about this the other day, and the fact that Ryan loved watching cooking shows. And I mean, most of his life, he was watching cooking shows. He would tell me when he was young, like a teenager, he would be watching, you know, Emeril Lagasse and, you know, all the old school cooks and chefs, and then, you know, and then when we got married, it was, you know, Bobby Flay and Alton Brown and Giada and all the Iron Chefs, and, you know, all of their shows he just loved. I think probably his favorite shows were Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. We actually went to a couple of the Guy Fieri restaurants that he had visited in Massachusetts, and those were really fun. Of course, Beat Bobby Flay and the Iron Chef shows. Chopped was another good one. Gordon Ramsay. Gordon's my favorite. And the Kitchen Nightmares and things like that. So those were some good shows. I watch them every now and then still, you know, when I catch them on the TV, but he learned and he would watch the show. He would watch the show and then he would just disappear. Like, I'd be like, where did Ryan go? And he had like gone to the store, gone and gotten all the ingredients that he needed to replicate the meal that the chef had just made. And he'd come back. He was notorious for going and doing that, which gets expensive if you're shopping for just one meal. So luckily he didn't do it often, but actually that's what he had done the night that he had the aneurysm. He had been watching I don't remember what it was, but that chef had made chicken wings with all this special seasoning, and, you know, and I remember, I think I had gone upstairs to put a load of laundry in or something, and came down and he's gone. And I'm thinking, where did he go? Of course, it's, you know, COVID. And I'm thinking, okay, well, and so he came back and he had groceries and he made chicken wings that night. And they were some good chicken wings. He was a great a great cook, so I definitely miss his cooking. I try. I'm really trying to take up the mantle of chef. Butter pecan was his favorite ice cream. Anytime we would go out and, get a sweet treat, especially ice cream, it was always butter pecan. We would go into Boston at least once a month when it was nice weather, not in the wintertime. But when it was nice out, we would go into Boston on like a Saturday morning. We'd get up early and we would go to, the market or wherever we were. And most of the time we always got a bagel and coffee is what we would get. And if Ryan was ordering a bagel, it was a lox bagel, which if anybody, if you know what that is, it's salmon. So it was loaded with salmon and cream cheese and onions and capers, and he just loved it. I love salmon, but I do not like capers. Ugh. So I never got that kind of a bagel. But that was his thing. That was always what he got when we would go out. He loved going to plays. Again, probably a, shocker for most people. Most people don't know that side of him. But, and maybe I kind of turned him on to it. I don't really think he grew up going to plays, but I loved, doing that. And so for our second Valentine's Day, pretty sure it was our second, he got us tickets for Phantom of the Opera. No, I'm sorry, it was Les Mis. He got us tickets for Les Mis, and it was in Roanoke. Yeah, Roanoke. And I dug up the picture that we took. That was before selfies, okay? You didn't just take selfies of your, together. We took pictures of each other so that we could see our outfit, because he was in this really nice suit and I had a nice sweater on. And I remember we got home that night and I said, we never got a picture. And so he took my picture and I took his picture right there in the house. And he loved plays. We went to Phantom of the Opera. I think that was in Newport News one year. I think we were married at that point. I think we did Mary Poppins. I can't even remember the ones that we've done. Professional, high school, Heritage puts on great plays. Liberty. Oh, we went to a couple at Liberty. I can't remember which ones they were, but he enjoyed it, and so did I. It was just a fun thing that we shared together. I miss going to plays. I haven't gone to any. Maybe I've gone to one since the world shut down. And then lastly, he was a minimalist. Ryan grew up with a lot of things, and I think as he got older, he just realized that, things are not important, and he became a minimalist. And it was always, I'm not a maximalist kind of person. I keep a clean house, and we never had a bunch of stuff. Just, we always had a place for everything. And, but even that would, I would come home and he'd be in this okay, Megan, we gotta clean. We got too much stuff. He would always, every so often, do we really need this? Do we really need this? One of the funny stories is when my mom and dad came up, when everything happened with Ryan, when they came up and they stayed, Mom was still working, so they stayed as long as they could with me. And Mom was helping to cook, because I was just obviously not doing anything. And so she was cooking and Dad was going grocery shopping. And so Mom was washing dishes and going through stuff. And we would eat like one meal and there were no spoons or forks or knives or anything left. And, Mom kept commenting, like, where's your silverware? Like, do you only have 4 of each? And I said, yep. Ryan it was just the 2 of us, and when we didn't really have a whole lot of people over because we would always go out, and so eventually she found what he had done with the rest of the silverware, because we only needed, according to him, 4 of each in the drawer. Everything else was put in a baggie and stuffed underneath the cabinet, out of sight. And so we found them and started using them. But sometimes it drove me crazy because I felt like I couldn't have certain things out because it would just stress him out. But I also was grateful, that he was a very clean, neat person. Everybody wants that, in a partner. So, but it's funny. A lot of our friends will say the same. They have some memories of him like that too. So those are just some fun, memories that I wanted to share, and because the rest of what I want to share is a little deeper, and I wrote a lot of it out just because, like I told y'all, this was rough this year. My mind was a little just all over the place, and I think maybe some of what I'm gonna share will kind of explain that. But I realized this is 4 years. This has been 4 years since Ryan went to heaven, and I kind of broke it down as I'm thinking back, through the 4 years. And I want to do more in-depth videos about my experience, because I really think that it could benefit a lot of widows, a lot of young widows especially. And the unfortunate thing is that it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of information out there, and it took me a while to find a lot of resources and a lot of stories, and thank the Lord for that's one good thing about social media. I connected to a couple young widows that their stories were kind of similar to mine, and I was able to use them as a resource. But I want to be that for other ladies as well, and I'll do more in depth, later. But for the purposes of anybody watching this, I just felt like going into it a little bit would be good. The first year of widowhood for me, these are my experiences. If you're listening and you're going through your own grief journey of losing a spouse or a child or a parent or a friend, family member, your experience could be completely different than mine, and that's okay. But when I thought back to that first year of after losing Ryan, I kind of summed it up into 3 words. The first word is shock. So you are just simply getting through. Like you're just simply in a complete state of shock of whatever situation. I lost Ryan suddenly. Others lose their family member or friend maybe more slowly due to an illness. Mine was just a complete and utter shock, and I've shared the details in other videos. But he was here 1 minute and literally gone the next. There were times where I didn't know the day it was. I didn't, but then I also, the second word is survival. I also felt like I went into a survival mode. I was responsible for everything. Every decision, every, all the bills, all the upkeep of the house, all the, everything, taking care of Max at the time, like everything fell on me immediately, like with no warning. It's just, okay, now you're responsible for all of it. The survival instinct of I've just had this incredible thing happen to me, and I can't process it right now because now I've got to turn into this robot of, I've got to figure out how to pay my bills. I've got to figure out what's going on with our house, all of that. And on top of it, for my situation, I was pregnant, newly pregnant, and I had to keep Sydney alive, I had to take care of myself. I had to take care of her. You just go into this survival mode. For some people, it lasts longer than others. For me, it lasted a long time. And then the third word is firsts. That first year, you are going through every single first without. So Ryan's, birthday, our anniversary, my birthday, holidays. Again, with my situation, I had Sydney, first child, the birth, all of her firsts, throughout that year and the next year, first word, first time sitting up, crawling, all of it. He wasn't there. He missed all of the firsts. And I missed celebrating some of those firsts with him. And, that year I tried my best I still celebrated his birthday. 2 of my friends came over and we made a cake and had dinner, and I'm so grateful that I had that. Yeah, I will forever be grateful that I was able to, celebrate those things even though they were incredibly hard. Year 2 for me was more of like that sucker punch of the fact that Ryan really was gone and that he wasn't just on a deployment, because he, twice in our marriage and once as we were dating, he had been gone for a year. He was gone for a year in Iraq. He was gone for a year in Fort Benning, and then another year later, he was back down there for a year. And so that first year, it sometimes to me, it just felt like he was on a deployment. And so when year 2 came, it was an actual like, he's not just gone on a deployment. He's the forever separation is true. And some of the seconds were just as hard as missing the firsts, especially for Sydney's. A lot of her firsts were that second year for me. So a lot of that year was just dealing with being a new mom and realizing, okay, this really is my new reality, that he really is gone. Year 3, I think, is when I was able to kind of start to find my footing a little bit. I was able to kind of breathe and realize that sucker punch of the year prior, that I was still standing, that it hadn't knocked me down completely, that I needed to keep living. I needed to figure out how to start thriving and not just living, mainly because of for Sydney, for her sake, because I don't And I still don't ever want her to... I want her to know the truth about my story. I don't want to, like, ever sugarcoat or just pretend like, oh, Mom was so strong. You know, like, I want her to know that I'm a strong person. And I have had my strong moments. But I also want her to look back and see the grief, too. And see that there was great love. And that's what made the loss even harder, you know. Because I want her to know how incredible Ryan was, and you know, and is still in our lives. And so I think that year I started to figure out how to have a relationship with Ryan still, even though he physically wasn't here. I needed to still have a relationship with him, and therefore allow Sydney to have a relationship with him, however that, you know, was gonna look. And I think I'm still trying to figure that out, because she, you know, she's 3.5. She still has not fully understood when I talk to her about Ryan, or we, you know, it's just things that she's saying back. You know, she doesn't fully understand. She's never asked me, why don't I have a daddy? You know, and that might still be a while off. You know, I'm starting to prepare myself for how to answer that question, but I still want to have a relationship with Ryan in different ways. This past year, so year 4, if you Google, what do widows, you know, experience the most after, you know, a few years into widowhood? Because I kind of wondered, are other widows like me, or what are their different experiences? And again, it's my experience as a widow. You can fill in the gap of, you know, this loss. I lost my parent. I lost, you know, a child, whatever. But for widows, what they say they experience the most after a couple years is loneliness. And I think I agree with that. You can be surrounded by family, friends, you know, if you're at work, you can have things to do, you can have places to go, you can keep yourself busy. But I think the loneliness starts to set in. And for some, I think it's a crippling loneliness. For others, it's just kind of that underlying, you just miss having somebody to share your life with. And that has really set in for me. It has set in that the person that I shared everything with, my thoughts and feelings, and, you know, shared life with, I don't have that. You know, of course I got people. I got family, friends, I got, you know I can call anybody up and talk, and but it's not just that. It's not just that connection. And that's been hard to deal with. I think there's a woodpecker back there somewhere. And a bunch of deer. See them? So that's been hard. I've definitely noticed that more, that sense of loneliness. I will say that I do my best, you know, to fill the gaps in by staying connected with family and friends, and staying connected with the Lord, and just finding that joy, you know, that I know is there. But the thing that I've realized the most, and this is where I'll kind of camp out for just a little bit, is that this past year has really been about rebuilding. That's the best word that I could come up with. It's about rebuilding. And I wrote down here the definition of rebuilding is to reconstruct something after it has been damaged or destroyed. On April 28th, 2020, when Ryan, breathed his last breath, we had been together, dating and married for 20 years. And I felt like the past that we had built, the future that we were building and had only a month and a half prior had realized that, our IVF transfer had worked and we were going to be parent. I mean, we were building our future. We had just found out we were going to have this future. And suddenly, it's like it just got set on fire and burned to the ground. All of it. Past, future, everything that we had built together, literally in a heartbeat. Just burned to the ground. And as I was thinking back on this, I really do feel like I was just sitting in a bed of ash. That for a very long time, that bed of ash where everything had been and everything had been destroyed, that I was just sitting on that bed of ash. Because for sure from that point until November, my sole purpose, literally, I lived for Sydney. I got up every day and ate for Sydney. I pushed the grief and the tears away as much as I could for Sydney. Because my purpose was to bring that child into the world. I did not want her to feel any pain. I did not, we don't know what, we know babies can feel things, and I did not want her to feel my grief because I don't know what that would have done to her. And so I tried my best to push that off as much as I could. And then when she was born, I finally let myself grieve. That first couple months was, horrible. Sometimes it's hard to even think back to that time. A lot of, I just tried to put one foot in front of the other. I eventually started trying to say that I needed to go to a therapist, that I needed to talk to somebody, that I, wanted to get back in shape, that I had all these things that, I wanted to do for myself, to better myself. And I just kept pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. I hung out with friends. I tried to do all the things. I had Sydney in every extracurricular I could think of as a little kid to keep her busy and stay busy. And, but I wasn't living. I was just still sitting on that pile of ash. And I'd say at least for 2 years. At least for those first 2 years is how I felt. I wanted nothing to do with God. I turned a deaf ear, to well-meaning. Of course it was well-meaning, encouragements from everyone. Because that's what we do when somebody's grieving. You send them verses and you send them, and it was well-meaning, and I appreciated the thoughts and the person reaching out, but I wanted nothing. I wanted nothing to do with anything God. Again, I've said this before, not that I blamed God for Ryan's death. I didn't, and I still don't. But I also was struggling with the whys, why now? Why did you not grant the prayers that I had for 3 days? to miraculously heal his brain. You know, I struggled with the whys. After that 2 years is when I started to kind of realize that, again, I wasn't living. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't giving Sydney what she needed, and I for sure was not taking care of myself. Mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. And that's when I finally reached out and I joined a grief group at a local church in Bedford, and that really, I think, released me finally to get back on the right path, to open myself up again to who I know God is and who He was through that entire time. He never left me. He just was waiting. And He knew that I needed time, and He was just waiting for me. Those steps helped me start to rebuild. I read this quote somewhere. I wish I could remember where it was, but it says, "Even though the fire is agony, it will not last forever. The ashes, no matter how desolate, will become the soil from which a new garden grows." And I thought to myself when I read that new is a scary word for somebody that has lost someone. You don't want new. I didn't want new. I wanted the old. I wanted Ryan back. I wanted my life back. I wanted my future with him back. I don't, and I still don't. I'm still at that place where I don't want anything new. I want what I lost. You know, I mean, I think at your core you always will. When you lose someone, you know, that's not going to ever go away. It'll change. You know, your acceptance of it will change, but you'll always want that back. And thinking about, like the quote said, that the ash will become soil for a new garden. It's a beautiful picture, and I feel like I'm able to appreciate it now better. Do we want the old? Yes. Do we know that God can do something good with the ash? Absolutely. 4 years into Ryan's loss, I think I can read the Isaiah passage that this is the passage that everybody uses when someone's grieving, okay? And I was reminded about this passage, you know, as I'm thinking about just how I felt with just the destruction of my dreams, my future. And I think I can read this again with new appreciation, and I wanted to share it just for anybody that, you know, needs to hear it again from a new perspective. It's Isaiah 61. These are the first couple verses. "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor." I really want to do a thorough review of that verse, or of that chapter and those verses. It's kind of too much to get into right now, but I encourage you to do the same. There's so much in that passage. Just a couple things that I noticed. when Isaiah writes the words beauty for ashes. He will give them a crown of beauty instead of ashes. There's a Hebrew word that's used there that I guess is hard to translate into English, but the word for beauty is the word for a headdress or like a turban. And it's almost like God is saying, I'm going to wipe out the ashes upon your head and replace it with, a beautiful headdress, kind of like a bride, would have worn back then. Now we wear like little tiaras or whatever, but back then the headdresses for the Jewish brides were beautiful. And so it's kind of like that word is saying that the give the crown of beauty instead of the ashes. And then it says about the oil of joy instead of mourning. And we all know that anointing and oil was, extremely important in that culture. And, to be anointed, oil was very, it took a long time, to produce the crop and then get the oil, and the rituals of the oil, in the tabernacle, in the temple, in the synagogues, it was a very important thing in the culture. And it was done a lot, during festivals and important times in people's lives. And the fact that Isaiah is telling us that God, will give us the oil of joy, anoint us with joy instead of mourning. That takes time. It's not immediate, but the joy does come in the remembrance and, in other ways. And then he talks about how God is going to clothe his people with a garment of praise. And again, the language, that is the words that are used there is talking about a garment of bright colors. And I think to myself, a garment of praise, a beautiful, not a black or dark, whatever, but a garment of praise, a beautiful garment that we can wear, that we can put on and live, be joyful, be vibrant, and not trying to hide ourselves, but take on that garment of praise. And then the oaks of righteousness, which I love. There's so many scriptures about, trees and roots and just the meaning behind that, but that those that mourn will be called oaks of righteousness, and a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. Trees represent us in this, and the oaks of righteousness, the mighty oaks are so strong and resilient, and it shows that Christ can be strong in us even when we're not, that we have Christ in us, and that we can be like strong, mighty oaks even when we feel like we're at our complete lowest and weakest. The rest of Isaiah 61 is just as good, so read it, but the last part I'm going to read here because I think it really wraps it up. It says, I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God, for he has clothed me with garments of salvation and arrayed me in a robe of his righteousness, as a bridegroom adorns his head like a priest, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. For as the soil makes the sprout come up, and a garden causes seeds to grow, so the sovereign Lord will make righteousness and praise spring up before all nations. I've started imagining myself, getting up from the ash, letting God brush the ash off of me, clothing me, in beautiful garments, restoring me, restoring my strength, reminding me who I am, reminding me who God wants me to be, who Ryan wants me to be, and then getting to work cleaning up the destruction that's there, because it's there. I'm on the ash heap. I'm up, restored, clothed, brushed off, but there's still destruction. And what do you do with that? I like to think of it that there are still pieces of our life there, okay? There are still things that can be used to rebuild. There's beams, there's windows, there's parts of walls. And I can use those things from that 20-year period to rebuild new. The foundation is still there. And I realized that as I was thinking through this metaphor, is that the right word, for my life? The foundation is still there because the foundation, number one, is God. And he was the foundation of our lives individually, of when we were married. He was always the foundation. So the foundation wasn't destroyed. The foundation is still there. And there are still parts of our life that are there that I can see and use now to rebuild on the foundation a new life for myself and for Sydney. And it makes me excited. Even like as I'm talking to you, I still have not fully fleshed out this idea. It literally has come to me maybe this past week as I started thinking about this. But I just know that God has a plan. He's always had a plan. You always hear beauty for ash, all of that I just read. And I understand it now. I wouldn't have 2 years ago. I would have said, whatever. But I get it now. And it's taken me 4 years to really start understanding and seeing what the future is going to look like with this rebuilding. I found a blog post from a widow. I have a folder on my computer and on my phone that I just keep stuff that I find. And her name is Erica Roman, and she wrote this sentence on her blog that has stuck with me. And it says, like running your thumb over a scar that stands as a reminder that flesh may heal, but will never be the same. And it's funny because I have a scar on my thumb. I don't remember where it came from, but it's there. And I love that idea of, like a scar, that injury was there and it healed. The flesh healed. And if it was deep enough or significant enough, you can get a scar. That piece of skin right there it'll never be the same as it was. It'll never look the same as it did. Is it healed? Yes. Is the initial injury, open wound, healed and covered over? Yes. But that little scar will always be a reminder of that injury and that hurt. it'll never be the same. I will never be the same. For as long as I'm here on Earth, I will never be the same. Losing Ryan has changed me forever. Some for the good, some for the bad. Situations good and bad. But losing him, that scar will always be a reminder of that loss. Am I healing? Yeah. There's a lot of things that have healed for me. My relationship with God has healed. I can remember the good of my 20 years with Ryan without having to constantly think about losing him. I can see the good in the bad, but I'll forever be changed. I'll forever be different. There's no going back to, the Megan that I was on April 23rd. And that's scary, that's kind of like, man, I wish I could go back to that Megan and say so many things. But I also feel like it's important to keep moving on, moving forward, moving ahead. Rebuilding is not forgetting. Okay? It's not leaving things in the past and just, okay, we're going this way. Rebuilding is using those things that were part of the destruction to put back together, to rebuild stronger, to rebuild better. And that foundation of having Ryan, being loved by Ryan, I will never, ever, ever regret. Because you hear people say, well, I would have never felt this, heartache if. I will take this heartache every single day over never getting to be loved by Ryan Ellis. Because I had a pretty darn good 20 years of being loved by Ryan Ellis. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and again, thank you for supporting me and loving me, and I miss that smile. Just thinking about it now, but okay, I don't know how to end this other than to just say love you guys, and thanks for everything. And I love you, Ryan, because I know you're watching over us. All right, thanks.